So, Shada, we are speaking after almost 2 years now. The last time we discussed many things, focusing primarily on Islamophobia in Europe and also the Black Lives Matter movement in Europe. Tell me, it's 2022, many changes have taken place. What are we seeing happening now?
So, Sania, these last 2 years have been quite a journey for the European Union as well. So it's, the Black Lives Matter movement, 2020 June was quite a wake-up call for the European Union in terms of heightened awareness of our own problems of racism and discrimination and violence against ethnic minorities. So that was quite an important moment in terms of a waking up of Europe, a rising of awareness and consciousness, if you like. So many things were quickly done, including an anti-racism action plan that was drawn up by the European Commission then and there, really very fast, and is they're trying to implement it now. But Brussels, what happens in Brussels doesn't always sort of be implemented by member states. We're 27 EU countries. So what happens in Brussels are guidelines, they're political steer, if you like, and it's member states that actually have to implement those rules. And that's where the problems come in, because 27 countries have very different approaches towards ethnic minorities, and discrimination is different in many countries. So there is an awareness now of systemic racism, institutional racism, a move away from the feeling that it's only, individuals or bigots who are responsible for racist action, people like Viktor Orban in Hungary, or the Polish Justice Party, which are very clearly bigoted, especially against Muslims. But now an awareness that unconscious bias and institutional racism is a problem. And the other thing I would say that's quite interesting is that there is a more conscious and more powerful, potent anti-racism movement across Europe. It's nothing like the United States yet, but we're getting there. We're getting to be more active, and our voice is stronger now than ever before.
What can you tell us about European Union's drive to create a union of equality, and what are the obstacles and challenges in the way?
So the European Commission here in Brussels, which is the executive agency, has said repeatedly that it wants to create a union of equality. And that means that no one is equal unless everyone is equal, so trying to really sort of eliminate all these inequities and injustices that are ingrained and embedded in the current system. Those are words, and policies have followed. They've brought out policies against discrimination against the gay people, against Roma, anti-Semitism. There is not yet anti-racism, as I said earlier as well, but they haven't brought out a strategy for fighting Islamophobia, or what they call anti-Muslim hatred. So there's a little bit of hierarchy going on within the sort of equality agenda, if you like, which I think is very troubling and makes many of us very uneasy. And there's a certain element of selective outrage in when inequalities are brought to the fore, which inequalities are considered to be politically very important to tackle immediately. Anti-Semitism, anti-Roma, anti-gay strategies are very potent also against discrimination against disabled people with disabilities. But there isn't yet one against anti-Muslim hatred. And I think this selective outrage is a problem for Europe.
What creates this, growing anti-Muslim sentiment, whether it is in the form of discrimination, stigmatization, or exclusion in areas of life such as employment, education? We keep seeing countries banning hijab or the head cover used by Muslim women in the region. Islamophobia is a very specific form of racism. Why is Europe failing to tackle it?
So they have tried to tackle it. And as I said, this anti-racism action plan that the European Commission has brought out talks about anti-Muslim hatred and Islamophobia as well. The problem comes when member states, the 27 countries, have to actually implement and enforce that. And that's where the national prejudices and biases against Muslims comes to the fore. The European Commission actually is trying its best to be equal in its treatment of inequities across the European Union. There is if I would say to you, it's too closely linked. Islamophobia is linked to the counterterrorism strategies that the European Union has been implementing actually since 9/11. That was quite a defining moment, as it was the world over in terms of perceptions of Muslims. And since then, Sania, every time there's a terrorist attack by Islamists, either linked to Al-Qaeda or, Islamic State, etc., there is collective guilt that is thrown on Muslims. So every single Muslim is considered to be, quote unquote, responsible for the actions of an extremist minority, a very small minority, if you like. So instead of treating terrorism as a criminal act, as many countries do in the world, the European governments have tended to make it into a kind of institutionalized Islamophobia, if you like. And that is a major problem. The securitization of the Muslim communities is a major problem across the European Union. And that, I think, is something that has to be fought and combated by anti-racist activists, and including myself. And that stigma is something that has become embedded in the European psyche. It sort of casts a dark shadow over Muslim communities. And that's become extremely frustrating for many Muslims in Europe who do not, the vast majority are law-abiding citizens, tax-paying citizens. They're European. We are European, we're not foreigners. And there is this kind of perception that Muslims in Europe are foreigners, perpetual foreigners. And there's this feeling that they are not really part of Europe, that they don't belong here. And that is a deeply embedded narrative that many of us are trying to really remove from the story of Europe.